What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. This is Oli JT Buron here. I've been a professional poker player for over 7 years now. I'm still battling up to 1k NL, and today I will be breaking down 13 hands from a session at NL50 where I won 10 stacks in EV. So if you're a low stakes or a micro stakes player, I'm pretty sure there will be a lot of key takeaways for you in this video. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. So first hand of today, we have a 3-bet pot. We go for the 3-bet with a polarized range with the queen 9 offsuit. It's actually a pretty low frequency. I thought it was bigger, but it's fine. I think my opponent is kind of a regular. I don't really know him. He calls and we go to a flop. We see a Jack-Jack 3 rainbow and we decide to go for a B40. Here you can go for a bigger sizing, of course. I decided to go for a B40 because I think it's gonna be overfolded with a bunch of stuff like the backdoor stuff there. It's actually hard to defend, so we decided to go for the B40. He calls, we see a turn. We see a turn 5 of clubs and we decided to go for a B70 and we decided to take this hand pure. Why? Because I think this run out is gonna be overfolded. I think it's gonna be overfolded with the region between 6s through 9s and even some king queen suited stuff like that that is going to be defending in theory. I don't think a low stakes player is going to defend these hands, so with the good blocking on the Jack X region I decided to go for it and my opponent folded. So nice first hand of today. Let's go to the next one. So second hand of today, we have the pocket 6s from the button and we decide to go for a 3-bet against the cutoff player to 8.5 big blinds. I discussed about my sizings at low stakes in this video over here, so I suggest you look at it. And we see a cold 4-bet from the small blind, who is actually a tight regular. Here with my pot odds, I think I need to just call this hand, even though the rake is high. I think we have a post-flop edge against the player, so we decided to call. We see a 9-7 deuce two-tone, and here it's very important, guys. He is a tight regular. He's going to be value betting his strong hands. When he checks, sure, he's gonna have the low frequency pocket aces, pocket kings with the diamond, or maybe even without the diamond, but we don't care. We want to cut the equity of the hands like king queen suited, ace queen suited, ace king. It's very important that you go for these small stabs because you're gonna deny a lot of equity of these hands. This time our opponent folds, but I think it's really important that you understand this concept. Low stakes, you're gonna print money. So let's go to the third hand of today. Third hand of today, we have the 4 deuce from the big blind in a single raise pot against the button. The button is actually a regular. And we see a flop and we see an 8-6-4 two-tone and we check, even though with range we should be having some donks in theory, but I'm not gonna do that, and our opponent goes for a small size. Here I think this size is gonna be capped and more weak than it should. Why? Because in general he should check a lot on these boards, but he likes to bet a lot. But when he likes to bet a lot, I think it's gonna be easy to mix some sizing here. I think with the pocket 9s, pocket 10s, probably straights and sets, it would have sides up. So we continue, no problem. Turn card, queen of diamonds. Here we check and he bets again, this time 5.5. And now I think at low stakes, most players are just gonna press the full button. But here, even in theory, you should be calling some of the time these kind of hands. And I think in practice, this guy is gonna be massively over bluffing and it's gonna be weak in this line. Sure, he has a lot of equity with his bluffs because he's going to have Jack 9, Jack 10, 7, 9, every 7x, 5x. Sure, he's going to have equity, but I think this hand should be a pure call against these kind of players. River card is the deuce of clubs. We decided to check, even though, again, we could have some donk bets, but we just check our whole range here, and our opponent goes for the B70. Here, I think in practice, this is just going to be a snap call. Even though in theory this is actually a bluff catch. Why? Because we don't beat any of his value. His value range should be 2 pair plus. It should not be taking hands like pocket kings or ace queen as a value bet. So in theory you should be folding this hand some of the times. But in practice I think it's just gonna be plus CB just because my opponent is gonna be over bluffing with the 7x region, 5x region, and 10-9, Jack-9, Jack-10 region. So I think this is gonna be printing money. We call and we see him with the 10-9. So we got this one. Let's go to the next one. Hey everyone, just a quick break. If you're enjoying the content so far, like and subscribe to the channel. I'm a small channel, so it really helps me grow. And if you have any suggestions on what to show in the next videos, drop a comment down below. Now back to the video. So another hand for today, we have the pocket queens from the under the gun. We decide to open a recreational player click 3 bets, which is very interesting, and the regular call 4 bets to 9.5 big blinds. Here with the pocket queens, close decision, you can 5 bet, you can call. I think it's close. I prefer to just call because this regular is pretty tight, and I think you want to let the recreational put money in the pot. We call, and the recreational calls. We see a flop 3-way. Flop comes down king 10-6 two-tone. We check, recreational player checks, and here the tight regular decides to check back. Here is very important. He's gonna be extraordinarily capped. Why? Because if he had a hand like ace king or pocket aces or pocket tens, he would just bet. We're 3 players in the end, a lot of draws are possible in this kind of situations, and we have a recreational player here. So he's gonna be betting always with this kind of hands, okay? So when the turn comes, deuce of clubs, I think here it doesn't have anything. So we could actually bet this hand, but this time I decided to check and decided that the recreational is gonna give us more information. The recreational goes for a bet 10% of the pot, and the regular calls, and now of course I'm gonna raise because I think I have the best hand actually 100% of the time. So I went for the 21 big blind raise. The recreational player calls. Of course the regular is gonna fold with this weak range, and the river comes 4 of spades. Now with this run out, I think I don't have much more value against the 10x region, so I decided to check and let the misdraw bluffs. Unfortunately, this time he had the 10, check down, and he shows up with the 10-8 suited. We got this one, 76 big blinds after rake, 72 big blinds pot. Let's go to the next one. See another hand today, and we see an open from the small blind against, I think, a regular, and we decide to call with the queen 10 offsuit. Of course, we're gonna have a polarized range. This hand I'm gonna just call from the big blind. We go to a flop, we see a queen 8 deuce rainbow. Here, at low stakes, most players are going to be c-betting both their good hands and their bluffs. So when he checks, I think he's gonna have a lot of middle strength hands. So I'm not gonna check this hand ever, and I just go with a pure bet, and I go for a big size bet. I wanna bet my hand, I have a top pair, and I wanna extract the max value. He calls, we see a turn for clubs. Again, he checks. And here I don't want to check my hand ever, even if in a solver you should probably mix like some 10-15% frequency of checking. I don't actually really care. At low stakes I bet my hand, I go for a pot size bet, and my opponent continues. You see the 7 of spades on the river, our opponent checks, and here I think we have just a pure value bet with the intermediate size. I went for a b70, and our opponent makes the call with the queen 9 offsuit. Of course, yeah, the queen, so it won't fold this line, but I think this is his top range in this line. Maybe the occasional 8-7, but I think here you should always go for 3 streets of value with the top pair. I see people at low stakes always making these mistakes of checking back, being afraid of some better hand, but here you should go for thin value. Always bet, remember. Let's go to the next one. Stand of today, we have the pocket 9s from the button, and we see an open from the UTG with a tight regular, and now we have a decision, and I think here in game I rolled some low number and I decided to go for a huge 3-bet. The reason why I'm going huge and the reason why I'm taking this hand is actually that I don't think my opponent is going to put pressure on my range. I think even though I'm over 3-betting, with the big sides, is not going to be able to 4-bet me and put pressure on my weak range. So I want to put pressure myself on his range, and I go for this 15.5 3-bet. He calls and we see a flop. We see a queen 6-3 two-tone. Here I'm going to mix a lot of sizings. I want to be honest with you, at low stakes I usually tend to bet my end, and here I go for a small size c-bet, keeping his range wide. He calls. See a turn card, which is the deuce of hearts, and here I check my hand, middle strength hand, we check, and our opponent goes for the b70. Of course, he's gonna have some backdoor flushes to bet. Of course, he's gonna have some flush draws. So I think my hand overall can mix calls and folds. We unblock some of his bluffs. So I think it's a good call for this reason. See a river card, six of hearts, and we check, and our opponent has a decision. He checks back this time, but if he bet this river, I would always fold my hand. This is very important in low stakes. He will not find enough bluffs on these lines. So it's very important that you lay down these middle strength hands against tight regulars. This time he checks back and he had the missed flush draw. So we take down this 100 big blind spot. Let's go to the next one. So next hand of today we have the pocket jacks. We decide to open from the cutoff, and our opponent, who is a regular, 3-bet us to 12 big blinds. We decide to make the call. We could 4-bet in theory. This time we roll the call. We see a jack 6-5 two-tone, of course a decent board for the out of position player. He decides to go for an intermediate sizing, and we decide to call, of course, with our top set. We see a turn and we see the 3 of spades. Our opponent continues to bet for 33 big blinds. Here we have a decision. In theory, you should always call this hand, of course. You should call and let your opponent bluff on the river. But in practice, I thought it was close because I think my opponent is gonna have a lot of ace-queen suited, ace-king suited, king-queen suited, with 2 overcards and a flush draw that are not going to fold to a jam. But they will always give up on a run-out blank. So I thought in game that my hand could have actually jammed, because of course he's never going to fold queens plus, and I decided to go for a jam. He instantly folds, so unfortunately it was bluffing. We do take down the pot. Let's go to the next one. So next hand of today we have some pre-flop action. We open the ace queen and we see a flat call from a regular, kind of a regular of NL50, and we see another flat call from the button, who is a recreational player. Here the big blind, who is actually a regular, decides to squeeze. I've seen him having some good frequencies of 3-bets, and here I think there's a lot of dead money. There's 14 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2. There's a lot of dead money in the pot, and I decided to go just for a jam. Why? Because I think I'm gonna cut a lot of his equity. He's gonna have king jack suited, king queen suited, maybe ace jack suited, ace 10 suited. All of these hands are just going to be folding. So I decided to go for a jam and put in a tough spot even hands like pocket 10s, pocket jacks, stuff like that. And if he's over 3-betting, we are actually printing here by jamming. This time the recreational calls and the regular was bluffing, so he folds, and we see 8, 6, 5, jack, king. And unfortunately we lose against the pocket 7s of the button. Let's go to the next one. So next hand of today, it's actually a punt from myself and that I want to show anyway. So we open the cutoff with the king jack offsuit, big blind defense, big blind is a regular, we see a flop, we see a jack 4 deuce two-tone. Here my opponent checks, and here I like to actually play a range bet strategy because I think my opponent are not aggressive enough, they don't punish this tendency, and even though in theory is actually higher EB to play a mixed strategy of checks and bets, I think playing a range bet strategy, betting your whole range at low stakes is gonna print money. I decide to go for a B30, my opponent calls, we see a turn. Turn is the 10 of spades, our opponent checks, and here we have a decision. I think in theory you should check some of the time these kind of hands, but I just went for a bet. We go for an intermediate sizing, of course on the run out that closes a flush, and our opponent continues. River card is the 4 of hearts, and our opponent checks, and here is where I messed up because I decided to bet even though it's not a bet in theory. I know it's close, so I'm actually okay with this kind of bet. I think it's gonna be actually plus EV to bet at these stakes, but our opponent decides to raise. Here, low stakes, guys. When they tell you a story, they tell you that they have a good end, they tell you that they have the nuts, you have to believe them. Here is where I make the mistake because I actually thought that he didn't have a lot of value because he would have actually check raised the flop with a lot of flush draws. That's a tendency of low stakes. So I thought maybe it was wrapping some weird full houses and stuff like that, and that it was probably bluffing with some random hand. But I didn't think about the actual range that he has. Here my opponent is supposed to be finding a lot of tough bluffs, like pocket 8s, pocket 9s, stuff like that. So I think it's actually a big mistake to call. I thought that blocking some Jack X combos of flushes, it was fine to call because it might be over bluffing, but I did not think about his whole range. He doesn't have intuitive bluffs. So here you should just lay down your hand and don't make the mistake I made in this hand. It shows up with the king queen suited. So of course here it was best to fold. So let's go to the next one. Another interesting hand for today, we opened the cutoff and a regular 3-bets us to 12.5 big blinds, and here I decide to go for a 4-bet of 26 big blinds. Calls, we see a flop, we see an ace king jack monotone board. Actually pretty hard to play these boards. I don't actually really know the theory of these spots very well. He checks, I decide to bet my whole range for a 10% bet. I think it's completely fine, and our opponent jams, which is actually really crazy because if you have a flush you don't want to just fast play in this way. So I think he's gonna have maybe a straight, maybe 2-pair. Actually I really don't know, he might have like pocket queens with the diamond. I just don't see how I can fold this hand, so I call. Of course this time we run into the lower 2-pair of ace jack, which I think is a pretty terrible play from my opponent. So let's go to the next one. Next hand of today, we have a 3-bet pot from the small blind against the button regular player. We go for 11 big blinds against the 2.2 open, and we see a 10-7-3 two-tone board. Here I'm gonna play a polarized strategy, betting around the overpair region, and of course the bluffs are going to be mostly over cards with the backdoor flush. This time we have the ace-9, of course the flush draw, and we take as a bet. Our opponent calls and we see a turn. Turn card is the queen of diamonds, and here I see most of low stakes player to actually always slow play their hand. I don't like this way of thinking. I think you should always bet the low stakes. They don't reopen enough, they don't put pressure on capped ranges, so you want to bet your value. I decide to go for a small size and our opponent calls again. River card is the 5 of diamonds. Of course not the greatest run out. Now it's gonna be hard actually to find these 2-pair or set call, or even some top pair calls. We don't care, we just go for it because I think when I check it's not gonna bluff a lot. So we just go for the jam, and our opponent decides to call with actually a hand that it's completely fine to call in theory. I think in this spot I'm not gonna have a lot of bluffs, probably losing this kind of play, but it's fine. We take down this 200 big blinds spot. Let's go to the next one. Next hand of today, we have a 4-bet pot against a regular. We decide to flat call pocket 7s a little bit deeper than 100 big blinds. I think here at low stakes you can actually always fold pocket 7s. I think I have a post flop edge, that's why I'm calling, even though I think the EV of these hands are pretty low. We see an ace 4-3 rainbow and our opponent decides to go for a small bet. I interpret this bet as a range bet, even though you should probably not range bet in these kind of scenarios. Your asymmetric region like kings, queens, jacks are not actually in a position to extract a lot of value out of position, so I think you should make some checks with your range. I decide to continue with the pocket 7s. Of course we have the backdoor straight draw, and we're not gonna fold to such a small bet. We see a turn, the turn comes down 10 of hearts. With my assumptions of the flop, I'm gonna actually put pressure on the pocket pair region, and I'm gonna bet turn and river always. Sure, it's gonna have the occasional pocket aces or pocket 10s, but we don't care, we just wanna go and put pressure on pocket kings, pocket queens, and stuff like that. We go for a B25, our opponent calls, we see a river and we see the queen of spades. Here, probably going back, I think I could just give up this hand. In game I thought it's gonna have pocket kings, I thought it's gonna have maybe some ace 5 that it can just let go, but it's fine. I think it's very close between checking and jamming. This time we went for it and our opponent decided to call, of course, with the set of aces. So unfortunately, we do lose this one. Let's go to the last one. Last hand of today, we have 3-bet pot, UTG versus hijack, 430 big blinds deep. I decided to go for 10 big blind 3-bet. The reason is that I'm not gonna face a lot of aggression from other regulars at the table. My opponent is going to be passive, it's not gonna put pressure on my range, it's not gonna 4-bet me enough, and I'm pretty sure that I will print money with this kind of hands. He calls. This time we see a flop and we see a queen 7-6. Here I decided to go for a range bet. I wanna have some information. I think here my opponent is gonna always raise with pocket 7s, it's gonna always raise with pocket 6s, it's gonna always raise with 7-6. So I think I wanna put pressure and I wanna know exactly how my opponent will approach this kind of board. So I decide to bet my own range and my opponent calls. See a turn card, which is a jolly. We see the 6, we make a trips, and here of course we can go for the overbet. But in game I thought that it was probably better just to go for the B70, just because my opponent is pretty passive, it tends to overfold, and I don't want to let him overfold on this node. I go for the B70, he calls, we see a river, and we see the 3 of diamonds. Our opponent checks, and here I think I can actually go for my whole stack. Unfortunately in game, I actually went for the B150 and our opponent called. Unlucky for us, it shows up with the lower trips, so probably if I went all in, it would have actually called. So we do lose some value in this situation, but I didn't want to let him fold the queen, so that was the reason. And we take down the 350 big blinds. So guys, that was it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed this 13 hands breakdown. By the way, I have a video on 3 tips on how to crush low stakes. I'll link it here. I'll see you in the next one.